Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and welcome to the podcast. A lady from Perth, Western Australia, via Darwin for 12 months, but originally from the Northern Hemisphere. Harriet Mellor, welcome to the podcast.
Well done with the pronunciation there, Darren. Thank you.
Well, we did have to check because there are some people in the world that are very specific on the pronunciation of their name, and I've been guilty of mispronouncing names of people on this podcast. And the first minute has been them correcting me and giving me a dissertation as to why it was wrong. So I'm glad I asked the question beforehand. So Harriet, welcome to the pod. You are the lead trainer and CEO at Your Sales Co. Been in sales for many years and looking forward to this conversation. How's things in Perth?
Hot.
Is it really?
It's always, yeah, we've got lovely weather. It's always very warm here. I feel like I don't know what the temperature is, probably like 26 degrees. So
26.
26.
Man, it's been warm in Melbourne, although right now it's about 12.
Oh, yeah, we don't do that here. Like it gets down to like 10 or 12, and then everyone leaves, they all go to Bali, and then that's it. But yeah, it's been, obviously we've had 2 long weekends, so it's been pretty quiet on the phone call front for the team. We obviously had a couple of short weeks. But no, Perth's good. Happy to be here.
Love it. Now, we're going to talk a lot about sales and sales leadership today. Your organization is all about lead development and sales development as a service. You're also a podcaster yourself, and we'll make sure that we give your podcast a bit of a plug. So, Sell Like Your, is that right?
Sell Like You, yeah.
Sell Like You. Why did I not? I didn't write that down very well, did I? Sell Like You podcast. All right. So before we get into that, I always like asking my guests a bit of background in terms of where you've come from, what led you into this particular industry, and specifically what you do today. Love to know, was this an evolution? Was there a revolution? Was there a catalyst? Were you born to be a salesperson, Harriet?
I think if you ask my mum and dad, they would say absolutely. If you'd ask me, I would say absolutely no way. Because I think for me, back when I was growing up, I was going to be a vet, and then I was going to be a lawyer because I could really argue my point. Like I could get my bedtime extended. I could, negotiate a dessert, extra pocket money, whatever needed to happen. I was a really good negotiator, and mum and dad just couldn't win. So I got my way a lot of the time. So there was definitely on the cards to be something of that. And I love animals. So I was like, I'm going to be a vet. And they were kind of the trajectory I think I had when I was much younger. And then through school, I had no idea what I wanted to be. I did travel and tourism at college, and then decided I was going to take on the world doing events. And I decided to skip out of university and go and be an events organizer. I thought it was going to be really glamorous, and I got to go and work and do all these really cool things. And I ended up working for an education company, running 156 events around the UK with my big Chrysler Grand Voyager with like stacks full of books and pull-up stands. And, I'd get really sweaty when I got there, and then I had to announce the event and then sell books at the end of it. But I wasn't selling, just to clarify, just giving people the books. And if you want to buy them, you buy them. And then I think not to give you the whole step by step, but I think then the catalyst for me was getting out of that, thinking I'm a bit bored. It's not really challenging me. I don't know what I'm going to go and do next. So I'm going to go and work with someone that runs a business. So my plan was to go and be a PA to the CEO of an organization, any organization, but I'll go and work to do that because I love business and I was fascinated by that. So got a job at a tech company for a hosting company in Manchester, and didn't get the job as a PA to the CEO. He said, I'm not going to give you that job. He said, but start Monday and we'll figure it out.
Is that right?
Yeah, and he saw something in me that I obviously didn't see in myself. And he said, "Come, you start, we'll get you in sales." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. Absolutely no way. I'll start, but I'm not doing that." So he said, "Okay, start, do events for us, do internal events, do client events, do fun." We were in the top 10 places to work in the UK.
Okay.
So he was like, "Just make some fun stuff." So we did, and we had lots of fun. We had lots of budget, and we could do lots of really, really cool things. So that was great. But the more I was in there, the more I got exposed to the business and IT and hosting and the cloud back then was so new. And it brought me into the forefront of what running a business was like and managing the different departments. And I was fortunate enough to be just trusted with a lot of different moving parts within the business. And I became a project manager my nickname was H-bomb. So the idea was that you drop me in a department, I blow up, fix everything, put it back together, and then leave and go and do another department.
And then
So
blow that up.
then blow that up. So H-bomb was the name. I had an email address, hbomb at, and that was it. So if they saw me coming, they'd be like, oh, she's been sent by the CEO and she's here. And then after that, I was like, we need to fix sales. And I was like, and I'm the girl for it. So I learned how to sell. And the following day, I taught people how to sell. So I learned on a Monday and I taught it on a Tuesday. I learned on a Wednesday and I taught it on a Thursday. So I was learning at the same rate I was teaching, but because I was a great teacher,
Mm,
trainer, I could take it on, understand what mattered, and then apply it.
yeah.
And then from there, that was it. I was off.
So if looking back, did you ever have the conversation with the CEO and ask the direct question, what was it that they saw in you that got them to take a risk?
Yes, I have had this conversation. I've had this conversation with a few people because I feel like people have taken risks on me, and maybe for them, they've always said it wasn't a risk because they could see in me. And I think it's the energy and the passion that I do everything with. And if I'm not going to do it with energy or passion, I'm not going to do it at all.
Yeah.
And that's what I've come to learn about myself, but it's also what I've come to learn of why people are drawn to me in those situations, when I was able to work for people. But now, while I build a network across the world, how I can connect with people and engage with them and stay connected regardless of where we are in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's a really interesting point because, yeah, and you mentioned it before, you learn how to sell. So H-bomb gets thrown into the sales department. On a Monday, you're learning how to sell. And on a Tuesday, now teaching people on how to sell, right? So that's a very specific skill set that not everybody has. So the ability to learn something and then be able to pay it forward to the point where that person you're paying it forward to can get a result. It may not be as good as you, but still a result is a terrific skill set that not a lot of people have. Or they can build it, but it takes a lot longer. So
Mm.
when you're thinking about that, and I'd like to ask you this question because I often ask sales teams who loves to be sold to. So you've just said before, hey, I don't want to be in sales. I wanted to be a PA, and then all of a sudden you get thrown into the sales department and you've turned it upside down, and the rest is history. You're on a trajectory. When you think of sales, what's changed for you in terms of your perception of sales as compared to where it was when you were starting out before you went into that sales department and changed it?
Something very specific happened in that company where I was working with the marketing department because there was a few things just not quite aligning. Now, no, I wasn't a specialist in any of these areas, but I understood what we were looking for, and we know what the goal was. So you work your way backwards and then
Mm.
navigate it and pull in the right people. When we were doing that, we were uncovering stories and use cases from organizations that were sharing the impact that our hosting service had provided.
Yeah.
Now, when I heard a story, I remember it like it was yesterday. Funky Pigeon, the card company. So we've got like Moon Pig, Funky Pigeon. It was all those. It was the first one of its kind. And so online cards, choose what you want. So people in the UK are going online, funkypigeon.co.uk. They're going onto the website, they're designing their card, but because they are hosted in the US, now this back then had a big impact. Hosting US, the data would have to go across the US, then it would come back to me in the UK, and the experience was really poor.
Yeah.
So they were getting a lot of bounce outs and a lot of people leaving the site and going to other organizations that were able to provide them a better service. When they switched, the impact we had from a revenue perspective and a client retention perspective was insane. And I remember saying, I was like, is that real? Are those numbers real? Is that experience real? Because I didn't believe it.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah. And then I turned to look at the sales floor, like down this end, and I'm like, well, why is not everyone on the phone? Why is nobody picking up the phone to shout about what we've done and how we've impacted? Because to me, that wasn't a sale. That
Mm,
was I'm doing a disservice if I don't pick up the phone and ring every other business that sells to people in the UK that's currently hosted in America because it's cheaper. They have to know that this is why. They have to
mm.
know that this is the reason. And that for me was like, get out my way. I'm going to go and solve this problem. So what I harnessed or what I unlocked there was the fact that selling is helping and it's providing a service. And when it's a no-brainer, in my words, that was what that was. That to me is not no longer sales. It's no longer, oh, is someone going to reject me? It was then about, well, actually, if you do, then that's on you because you're welcome for me picking up the phone and letting you know. And I'm
Mm.
going to keep going because everyone needs to know about this. And that was the approach. And I think now, looking back, and if I go back all the other jobs I've worked at a fish and chip shop. I was a manager at McDonald's. I've worked at Next Clothing. You name it, I have done it somewhere, some shape or some form. I even did cold calling and I still didn't class that as sales. So it was, for me, it was just about solving a problem, helping somebody and getting that message across. And now I am like, I'm the ones that stand up and like, yes, I'm Harriet, I'm a salesperson and I'm proud. And I think that for me has been the real shift. But that was, yeah, about 12 years ago.
It's really interesting you say that, and I'm glad you shared that story, and I'm glad I asked that because one of my biggest philosophies around sales is just that it's the ultimate form of service, and it is problem solving, right? The unfortunate thing though is many organizations get caught up in their own, and I say this respectfully, their own self-importance. They think their products are the best. They try to, similar to what the current politicians are doing leading up to the election, they're trying to point the fingers at each other and potentially deflecting attention away from their own inadequacies. So they make it all about their product, all about their service, and thinking they're the best, and forget the fact there are people out there looking for solutions to problems, and our role is to try and articulate that problem and then potentially provide a solution. And when we find that, that's when service or the sales become the actual best form of service, because you're not retrofitting something into a perceived need. You're actually providing something that will tangibly help that organization or that customer solve a problem that they want or they need to solve. So the approach is completely different.
Mm.
And I'm glad you answered that, because when I ask people of that question, many people have, and particularly people in sales, don't have a very flattering thing to say about salespeople, right? And it's very rare that I come across, and probably I can count on one hand the number of clients I have who actually turn around and said, Darren, I love to be sold to. I love to be sold to because I can see the process that a person goes through. I can see the discovery process. I can see their brain ticking over. I almost can preempt what they're going to do next. And if they don't, then I'm disappointed.
I was gonna say that is the only problem though. I feel like I'm always disappointed. And not always because I watch people, I'm like, oh, I was like, how are they gonna sell next? What's gonna happen? And then they either, exceed expectations or they don't. And I think it's quite I had a guy cold call me the other day and he was proper cheesy and he started off with like if it was like this like kind of I can't remember what he said now, but it was like this line and I laughed and I said, does that work? And he then laughed and he said, let me try another one on you. He was really confident and he went again and gave me this other one and it was even worse and I was like, I wish I was recording this call. I said, these are brilliant. And then in the end, it was to do with Facebook. And I said, I actually don't advertise on Facebook, but I said, I appreciate, the call. And then he asked me another question and I answered it. But because I think for me, I love getting calls because I'm like, oh, how are they going to approach this and what happened and see what happens. But I think it's so frustrating when I do get them and it's just the generic, the
Yeah,
pitch, the non-stop. And I always go and look at the company. And, if it's somebody I'd want to work with, I'd message them and say, hey, can you please just give your call team this script
yeah,
and maybe run with this because this opener is not going to get you anywhere and let me know
yeah.
what the numbers go. So it's giving because
Good business development angle there, Harriet.
well, and not it's not even that's not the goal. The goal is just let's help some salespeople because the poor salespeople are being given a script and they're like must follow script. And then when they follow it, they're not going to get anywhere.
No,
And that's going to be really disheartening. And then they're going to go, sales, being in sales is awful. And it's the worst thing I've ever done. And I'm never going to do it again. When actually, it's just down to how you approach it.
correct, correct. Because it is the ultimate form of service, and it is one of the most incredible pastimes or careers you can ever have.
Mm.
100%. Now, talking about, it'd be remiss of me to say this because I know you use LinkedIn as part of your, I guess, your funnel and the work that you do. How often do you get people jumping on LinkedIn and sending you connection requests, which is almost like the online version of a cold call? And as part of the actual connection request, or immediately after, they go straight into the hard pitch mode.
They get removed. It happens a lot. But do you know, it happens less because I remember somebody was saying to me, this was quite a few years ago, we were talking about LinkedIn is still at a phase, but it went through a phase a few years ago where everyone's like, oh, it's just so spammy and everyone's messaging and I'm just being sold to constantly. And I remember somebody saying that you've got to be mindful of who you're connecting with, because if you're saying yes to all the salespeople, of course you're going to be sold to.
Yeah.
So be mindful of who you say yes to. And I think there was this vanity metric, and maybe there still is,
Mm.
around how many connections we've got and how many followers we've got. And, you know, you see the people with 20,000, you're like, wow. But of those 20,000, how many of them are buying? How many of them are actually like engaged? Or is it just because they did something cool once and they all now follow them? I don't know the answer to that. And there's some awesome people on there with 20,000, but there's also some awesome people on there with 1,000,
Yeah.
and they just don't necessarily use it, or they don't see it as anything valuable in their day. And so for me, if I get somebody that requests and they're an SEO specialist, or if they're a lead generation specialist, I love those ones. And then they're offering me leads. I'm like, maybe just go check what I do first and then come back and let me know if it's still relevant. But usually if that happens, I just delete the message and remove the connection, because I don't want that in my inbox all the time. And I find when I do that, it gets less and less and less.
Yeah.
I still get, emails. I've had one the last 2 days, same person, asking to get a guest on the podcast. And it's obviously a copy and paste because it's not the right podcast name and then it's not the right guest name. So I've replied and I was like, I think you've got the wrong person. So I'll see what happens. But I just like to have a bit of fun with it, to be honest. I'm a
Yeah.
bit of a sicko like that, of like, what cold messages will I get? If I reply, what will they say? It just makes for good content that I can share later.
Well, it does, and the reason I ask that is I get it as well. And
Mm.
being a person that's in sales development, sales leadership coaching, but also a podcaster, I get a lot of podcast promoters, podcast editors, videographers, connecting, and I'm the same as you. I will very often say yes because I'm really intrigued as to what they do next. What's their sales approach? What's their sales cycle? Are they really there to build a relationship, or are they there to pitch because they're desperate for a new client? It's just fascinating to watch because it provides great it provides great fodder for content, but it's also great case studies for what not to do.
Absolutely.
So let's pivot a little bit because you're in sales development as a service, lead development as a service, and I've looked at a few of your posts, and particularly around December where you ran a big intensive and you got a lot of action happening out of that. And I think the quote at the end of your post was something like, "Who said things are quiet in December?" Something like that. Right. So I'd really like to pick your brain because there'll be people listening to this that are in business to business sales, whether they're in cybersecurity, whether they're selling IT, or whether they're selling anything in the B2B marketplace. A lot of the principles are going to be the same. Thinking about what are some of the key guiding principles that you work with your clients that can help build healthy pipeline, but also longevity and sustainability in the sales realm. So if we start with I guess, some key overarching guiding principles when it comes to selling or business development, what are some, I mean, we've probably touched on a few of them already, but what are some guiding principles as almost like a foundation from your perspective?
I would say at the start of the beginning, because there's so much emphasis on this end goal of a sale. Like that's what everybody wants. They're like, we want more sales, we want more revenue. cool, like that's great, like that's the end goal. But to
Mm.
get there, we have to do a few steps, and whether they're 3 or 4 or 6 or 10, they have to exist to get you there. Now, some of them we might be able to skip over, but we still need to maintain that consistency to get there. And so if we look at those guiding principles, for me, it's always be really clear on who it is you want to go after. So
Yeah.
if you're looking at, and where I start is always replication of ideal clients. So it's a process that we followed. And interestingly, I think a lot of what I've built out is things that I've done forever. But they didn't have names then. It wasn't, oh, let's replicate our ideal clients and go through. It was like, let's just find more of those and let's go work out where they are. And so then, back then I remember it being mining services, 400 staff. So, okay, cool, let's find more of those. And that's what we would then go after. So it's based on size of organization. But the reason why we cared about that was because we were looking at the messaging and the problem, and the outcome would be fairly similar if we
Mm.
went after all mining services organizations that had 400 to 600 users. They're
Yeah.
going to likely have the same amount of people in that team that I want to go after. They're going to likely have some similar challenges. They're going to have similar compliance requirements. Their revenue point may or may not be the same, but if we can find a commonality within there, that's what we then develop upon and build an outreach strategy for. When we know who we're going after, it's then about maintaining consistency and having an approach that leverages multiple channels. So it's not just email, it's not just phone call, it's not just LinkedIn. It can include networking, it can include post if you really want to go there. And there's been some incredible outreaches via posts, which I love to see. And it's really then about having those step by step, so that once we've attempted one, what does number 2 look like? What does number 5 look like? What does number 10 look like?
Mm.
When we hit a certain number, what do we do with it? Does it die? Do we never touch it again, or do we come back to it? And I think for me, the bit that drops off is we do one kind of spray pray approach of just quick, let's go. We do it once, maybe twice, and then we say it didn't work. And that is incorrect, because it didn't work through that one channel, through that one message, through that one email that you tried. And the second email was, did you get my email below? So it's not really inspiring. And I think that's the bit.
I just want to bring this back to the top of your inbox.
Yeah, just bumping this one up. It's not special.
No.
And so I think if we know who we're going after, and we have a really clear approach to going after and what that needs to look like day in, day out, week in, week out, and have a really simple process, we can do that on repeat. And the beauty of that is that it keeps us salespeople interested. Because
Mm.
the one thing I've been reflected upon is that, we like to have things fast moving and things changing all the time. And depending on your sales cycle, if you've got something that's quick, great. You can prospect, you can develop, you can close, done, next one.
Yeah.
But it's all going to be the same. But if I'm one day, that morning I'm doing a bit of LinkedIn, that afternoon I'm going to a networking event, that day I'm doing something else, it just keeps things interesting as you're going through. But it allows you to try different things and find your own flow that works for you and generates results, because that's what we really care about.
Mm.
And then I would then say then moving into then utilizing the systems. So making sure the follow-ups are there, the cadences, the activities, and then being able to then go through and build a pipeline and looking at each stage as its own priority pool. Whereas a lot of businesses, once they've been established, or once whether they're established or not, they just care about meeting, like not even meetings, they care about pipeline and close rate.
Mm.
Whereas I'm like, what about the meetings? What about the call expectations? What about the outreach expectations? Oh, we don't have them. We just have a revenue goal. And the challenge with that is at the end of the quarter, I don't hit my target. I just look at the target and go, we'll just do it again next month, next
Yeah.
quarter. Whereas then we then start going, well, how many calls are you making? And the habit we've created for our sales teams is that we're no longer looking at numbers of KPIs of these smaller metrics early on. So when we look back and start doing it, they're like, why do you care how many meetings I've got? Why do you care about how many calls I'm making? You didn't ask me that
Mm.
day one. Why do you
Yeah.
care now? So we create these monsters that are focused on KPIs. It's focused on revenue that might take 3 to 6 months. We need to see results today. So I would say, let's look at KPIs, let's look at activities, and then we care about the revenue. And that's where it comes back to, you want to go to the top, to the revenue juicy bit. Cool,
Yeah.
let's start with prospecting. let's work out there, let's do it together there, and then let's build upon that. Because if you do the activities, the rest of it will come.
It's interesting you say that because you're right. In the space that I've been operating in for 20 plus years, it's a generalization, but the vast majority of sales leaders, and when I say sales leader, these are chief revenue officers, sometimes CEOs that say, "Hey, just deliver me the number, Harriet. I don't care how you do it. That's and every single it cascades down, and every single meeting is all around the number. Where are you in relation to the number?" It's very rare, even in 2025, to have a person within a big organization running a sales team that is now starting to look at each of those individual statistical business behaviors that will lead to the number and start to drive some consistency around that. It's staggering because all the conversation is, "Hey, Harriet, you're behind in your target. What is your gap closure strategy?" And then there's silence. And it's kind of, "Oh, you need to make more calls. You need to drive more pipeline." Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Thanks for that. But what are you doing in terms, what's the fundamentals that you're doing? So I like the fact you're now changing the narrative around what are the fundamentals. And it doesn't have to be just outreach in terms of emails. It doesn't have to be just LinkedIn. It doesn't have to be phone calls. Because the other thing I was going to talk to you about was this marrying or collaboration between sales and marketing. Because a lot of organizations have marketing within the organization to drive market awareness. And often the salespeople are saying, "Hey, marketing are not providing enough leads to us." And then the sales team are not converting. So the marketing team is saying, "We're giving you some fantastic inroads to these markets, and the sales team are not converting." What is going on? So is that something you see as well out there?
100%. And that's where lead development as a service was born, was from that exact problem. Because, we had these marketing teams that are spending money, and it came, I mean, the service was born out of an existing client that wanted to develop the leads that they had. And it was a covert operation that was highly secretive and nobody knew about it. But there was marketing budget and they didn't have to get approval for it. So
Okay.
they said, we're keen to see how you guys go, and we're going to give you some of our old leads. So we got this list of about 500 leads, and they were all generated from past trade shows, downloads, inquiries. And some of the notes on them was disqualified, no op, no contact, no op, incorrect phone number. And I remember doing the training, and I called them. I called a handful of them, and they were all answering. And I was expecting just crickets. And I was getting, find the number, grab the number, apply it, pick up the phone. And these were big businesses. Like, these were household brands. We all know who they are, corporate brands, but they were C-levels.
Yeah.
And I was getting the mobile number, and I was ringing, and they were like, "Oh, hi. Yeah, it was great to meet you guys at the event." What is going on? And I was thinking, this surely has to be harder, because like they're so desperate to get these leads over the line. And so we did the first few. We booked the first few meetings like day one, and I was like, "Kev, I'm going to book the meeting." It all just felt a bit weird.
Yeah.
Then as we go through, obviously, then you start getting the no answers, and then the people that don't know who you are, and that's fine. And we develop on that. So we got given this whole lead list of just really old, kind of not much intel, and we worked that list. And that came from the exact process we just talked about a moment ago, of building that cadence of following up, of knowing what to do next, how to do it next, and then what we need to add. The extra piece to that puzzle is adding value, which is education, webinars, downloads, reports, collateral, things that's going to allow you to just experience who we are and what we're offering on behalf of others. But how does that translate? And so what we've found now, we've got a lot more clients on board, and we're working with so many different departments and size of organizations, that we're seeing that the sales team don't want to do it. So the sales team are like, "That's fine, take it off us. We don't want to do this anyway," because we give them nicely warmed up, ready to go meetings that are hand delivered and over to them, ready to go. The great thing is the business already has the leads. They've already got the events lined up. They've already paid the funding. All they're doing now is, instead of bringing on another SDR or allowing their SDRs to go off and do outreach, which is what they should be doing, of new
Yeah.
cold leads, we're doing all the warm up. So we essentially sit with marketing, which to me is really interesting because when we started the service, we were speaking to sales directors, we were speaking to C-level in sales and chief revenue officers, not chief marketing officers,
Mm.
not regional heads of marketing, not senior marketing managers. And that's who's signing our contracts, not sales. And it's so interesting. It's so refreshing to see, but it's so interesting to see that marketing care about the leads that they're generating, and they have a target often where it's how many are being followed up and how many of those turn into pipeline and opportunities. And if they're not being followed up, marketing's going to be annoyed. But then for sales, they go, oh, that's not a good enough lead. And the leads are great. There's nothing wrong with a lead. A lead is just a name and a phone number and a source. That's it. It's like
Well,
the
the sales saying it's not good lead because they haven't been given it on the platter where they just have to
no.
walk in and get it
With a
signed in
bow.
triplicate.
Yeah, exactly. We've done all the work for you. And I think that is also, you get that mainly for, if you've got seasoned salespeople or senior, they're like, we don't want to have to do the hard yards anymore. Fair enough. Leverage your network. If you can nail it, do it. But I think it's become this like, oh, I don't want to make too many calls. And it's, I think that era's changed because if I think back to when I started it, when I was doing the calls in Manchester, we were doing 120 calls a day, and that was pretty normal. Like that
Yeah.
wasn't mind blowing. That was just cool. Like you did that.
Mm.
And there was some of the days where you didn't speak to many people, but
Yeah.
when you did speak to people, you had three, four, five conversations, you booked a meeting here and there. Awesome.
Yeah.
Imagine if your salesperson booked a meeting every day. Like that's almost unheard of at the moment.
Mm. Mm.
And, if I look at the results we generate, and that's why the post come back, what you said before around December, so many people are like, it's a dead month, like nothing happens in December. If you say nothing happens in December and you don't try, nothing will happen in December. And
Right.
same thing with the first week back in January. And I'm mindful of what I share with the team. I'm like, oh, it's going to be a hard week. And I didn't say that. And I was like, look, first day back, let's not call people because I also know when to call and when not to call. So I'm like, let's not do day one of like the 6th of Jan. I was
Yeah.
like, let's wait to the 7th or 8th. Let's do some development. Let's work together. Let's do some training. And then we'll get stuck back in. And meeting week one, I think one of the team got 5 meetings in that first week. And that's in like the notoriously the hardest week. Same thing in the 2 weeks before Christmas, especially in Australia, because everyone's at the beach. Like there's,
Yeah.
there's nothing happening. Whereas UK is different because UK, we all work right up until you work in between and you work after because it's miserable and cold and no one
Yeah.
wants to be off. So know your market. But in there, it's around we were able to do that because we had a process, because we had a team that's engaged, and we don't have any preconceived ideas of it being right or wrong.
Mm.
And now I'm seeing the call volumes for the teams I'm going in to work with. Some of the days it's like 12 calls and
For
their
the
job
day.
is business development a day. 12. And I was like, so what did you do after 9 a.m.?
Oh,
Like, research,
that's it. Research.
research,
That's it, Harriet. There's a lot of research. There's a
a
lot of
lot of
different sites I've got to
research,
look at. Oh,
a
that's an
lot of
interesting
research.
article.
Yeah. But where does that research live then? Cool, go do the research, but where does that research live? Like go put it in a CRM, go put it on a strategy document that says this is how we're going to go, after them. But what the thing, and it's obviously I teach this, but also I've got the team, so I see them every day, and I also remind them I've done it all, like I've done every trick in the book. So don't pull anything, or do, but I'll find it. And I think then like with the call, the call volumes, I set the expectations straight away from the beginning. But when we're looking at the ways then that I see them going through everything like the website and check and then LinkedIn and check. I'm like, what are you looking for?
Mm.
The CRM says they went to this event. We haven't spoken to them since. Just ring them.
Just ring
I,
them.
I don't need context. I
Yeah.
just need to know because if they answer, I've got their website up and I can scan and talk at the same time. So that's fine. I can do both of those. And then if the conversation goes further, awesome, let me book a meeting. Let's find out more.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I think it's overcomplicated and we're spending a lot of time procrastinating when we could just pick up the phone and have a conversation.
Well, it's interesting. It's yeah. I mean, when you're talking about 12 calls in a day, and I think there was some studies done. This is probably going back 10, 15 years ago, where they were actually looking at the amount of productivity in a business development manager's day and the selling time in a 7.5 hour day. It was something ridiculous like 20 minutes for the whole day. That is what their productivity time was. And you think to that, you think, well, what else were they doing for the whole day? They're
Mhm.
probably navel gazing, pontificating, having coffee, having good conversations, strategizing, and
Yeah.
not actually doing the things that they're there to do. So
Mm.
it's fascinating. So one question I wanted to ask you on that is if people are using the phone, for example, because there'll be a lot of people that still use the phone, especially the older generation, love to talk on the phone. What's your thought when you are working with organizations and with your team, you get voicemail, all right? How many messages do we leave before we say, you know what, we're probably not going to get a return call? Or do you then say, well, I'm going to leave three messages, then I'm going to look for another avenue to at least build some awareness?
I don't leave voicemails.
You don't leave voicemails. Okay.
No, because do you want me to tell you why?
If you'd like to.
I think well no I think for me voicemails are they're like when you call someone it's like ooh who is it and then they answer and then it's like oh hey and then it's my job really quickly to get them on not wondering who I am or not questioning how I got their phone number but leaning into the conversation because we're opening it in a really strong friendly familiar way
Mm,
when we do a voicemail and I leave you a voicemail, I don't know if you've seen, if you've got an iPhone, the updates now that it changes it to text.
yeah.
So you can see it. If you go into voicemail, you can see the transcription.
Yes.
Straight away, I go, oh, it's Darren from the exceptional sales leader. Delete, because I don't know who he is. So I just delete straight away. You never existed. And I just move on with my day. And then, or what I do is I don't delete it. And then when you ring me again, it says maybe Darren.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, that's that guy from the, nah, okay, I won't answer that. So that's what happens. And if we are going to go through, because if you think about it, if a random number, and I think this is obviously changing as well because so many people are doing it, but it used to be that like you would get a landline number would be the outreach number. Now that changed quite a few years ago where it's like, oh, if we ring off a mobile, they're going to answer because they're going to think it's a friend or something. And we definitely do get a higher response rate if we're ringing a mobile off a mobile number.
Yeah.
And if I ring you today and then I ring you tomorrow, you may or may not recognize the number. I probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
But let's then say you ring me again the next week and maybe try again the week after. What will sometimes happen is I will go and decline the call because I'm in a meeting. So, you get the generic, I'm in a meeting, can I call you later?
Yeah.
I would reply to those.
Yeah.
So you decline my call and it says, can't talk now, can I call you later? And I go, absolutely. Thanks so much, Darren. Chat to you then. And then you're like, I obviously know who this is. I'm going to
Who is
call them
it?
back. So then you call me back and I'm like, Darren, it's Harriet. How are you? And then we have a chat and you don't feel annoyed because that's my job to make you not feel annoyed on the opening call.
And I'm thinking, where do I know Harriet from? Am I supposed to know Harriet?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Love it. Love it. So don't leave. Well, you know what? My personal view is a little bit different to that. So, but having said that,
Mhm.
I pretty much I pretty much talk or call people who know me anyway. So I don't do a lot of I don't do cold calling. I don't have to now, which is great. But for me, because I never really used to like it. But I say to people if they ring me and they don't leave a voicemail and I know them, I'm not going to call them back because I'll have people that say, "Oh, but I've been calling you." I had one guy actually call me about 15 times over 2 days. And he said, when I caught up with him, he said, "You never returned my call." And I said, "No, that's right, because you never left me any context, right?" So it's interesting. There'll be people out there that would expect a voicemail that may not actually return your call, but I like the tactic of getting the response to the text message. Hey, can I call you later? Because
Mhm.
if the number comes up, and you think, oh, maybe I do know this person. Yeah, I like that.
Try it later. I think the thing I always find interesting is that you said there about how you need a voicemail. I said I don't, and also don't listen to voicemails, and that's why I love the new feature of the text. So I'm like quickly scan, and that's what it is. And I remember someone ringing me. They're like, "Oh, just give me a quick call. Did you get my voicemail?" I'm like, "Nope." And then it was like a 3-minute voicemail. I was like, "You're gonna have to tell me like quickly what it is, and get to the point." But I think the interesting thing is that often we sell in the way that we like to be sold.
Yeah,
And that's not right because we are selling. So if and this is where it comes with this collaboration, is
Mm.
that although I wouldn't change the fact that we wouldn't leave a voicemail for you. If I'm trying to get hold of you, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try the call. I'm going to try email. I'm going to try LinkedIn. I may try text message if you text me,
Yeah.
and try that approach. Now, my goal is to get hold of you and get you at a time where you go, oh, I've got 5 minutes. If I'm in the car, you've got me for 20 minutes, 30
Yeah.
minutes while I'm on the way somewhere. And
Mm.
that's when you'll get, if someone rings me and they're trying to sell me something and I answer the phone, they've got 20 minutes and I will chat and I'll tell them whatever they need to know. But if they get me and I'm like mid juggle of bag and coffee and I'm running into a meeting, I'm pissed off that
Yeah.
you've answered that you're ringing me. So everything's contextualized around the
Yeah.
situation of what you're entering. And I saw a video the other day and it was, because everyone loves this whole like hook of like cold calls dead. And it's like, stop cold calling. And I'm like, don't stop. And so, there's this video and this guy was talking about texting. And I was like, how interesting, because text message is such a personal form of communication. It's something that we can be interrupted with at dinner. It's something we can be interrupted during
Yeah.
family time and or at the gym. Whereas a phone call, we're not necessarily being interrupted. It might just stop your music for a minute,
Yeah.
if that's what the level of interruption. So I think it's being mindful of that's why the collaboration of effort exists, because if you're a voicemail guy and I'm not a voicemail gal, then that's not saying that it's right or wrong, but it's just saying I'm gonna have to try multiple other things.
Yeah.
And maybe my last ditch attempt for you might be to leave a voicemail,
Yeah.
but for me, I just think it gives away too much of your power and then you're lost in it. But like you said, if it's someone you know, and then if I know I'm working with you and I know you love a voicemail, then I leave you one, or maybe I forget to leave one and I send you a voice note instead.
Mm. Yeah.
So, or a quick text message being like, just need 5 minutes for
Mm.
this. So I think all of that is very much, that's why the collaboration, the multiple approach exists.
And I think it's yeah, I like the way you say that. And I do a lot of work with teams as well that talks about different styles of learning preferences, personality styles, different communication styles. So as you go through, you'll work out what works for you, because as a salesperson, you will typically have your preferred method of how you like to communicate to others, because as you said, based on how you like to be communicated with. Well, I think what we're saying is don't get stuck on just one avenue. Look at multiple different channels, because if you look at 2025 and beyond, it has never been easier to find out information about
Mhm.
people
Ever.
ever, right?
Yeah.
So there should be no excuse. So whether that's a phone call, whether it's a text message, whether it's an outreach, whether it's a cold email, all of those work, right? But you've got to work out what works for you.
Absolutely. And if I love talking about the yellow pages, and I remember I used to have a ruler and I'd go down the yellow pages and I'd get to the next number and I'd draw my line under and then I'd get the phone, and that was how we did it. It shows my age, but that was the approach. And then a bit of Google kind of came around. It's like, right, let's do Google. And then now I think it's funny because I still talk to people about Lucia or about Zoom Info, where you gather mobile numbers and email addresses, and they're like, what? This exists? Yeah, like so much of this exists. And I think I've been using Lucia for about 2 years. And since it first started, I'm still on their legacy plan. And that's a great place to be. It's much cheaper than what it is today. But there's so much out there, as you said. But I think then if you also look at the other statistics around the fact that we've never been more connected to people in our lives, but yet people feel so disconnected from the world and
Yes.
from others. And that, I think, is a true representation of where salespeople are at, because they are like, I'm just going to send an email.
Yeah.
There's all these jokes and memes around, manager asked, did you call that? I sent them an email. Oh,
Yeah.
are you going to call and say, I'm going to send them another email. I'm
Yeah.
going to send them a LinkedIn message. It's all, and that is the generation, because they're not phone callers. They are, messages on Facebook Messenger, and
Yeah.
that's how they communicate. But that's not communicating. That's just copy, paste, send, and bots can do that now. So we do we exist anymore? Do we need to exist anymore? We
Yeah.
do, because if we just keep acting like bots, everyone's just going to close us off. And
Totally.
if we're human and connect and build that relationship, we're going to be able to do a lot more than we can with just a quick email.
It's fascinating that you're right. The number of people, and even like my kids, they're in their 20s now, and both of them, they think, Dad, I couldn't think of anything worse than making a phone call to somebody, right? They use their phones as like mini like Google's and nothing. And I can't even remember the last time they even made a phone call on their phone, right? Probably when I called them. But I say to them, and I say to salespeople, and I say to leaders all the time that the differentiation of you against your competitors is if you can make your communication personable, right? And you can communicate face to face, obviously, is the preference, but some form of connection, human connection, that's going to differentiate yourself against the competition. As hard as that might be to do, right? That is a differentiation because just about every other person is defaulting to text message or to LinkedIn message or to email, the easy way.
Totally.
Which brings me to this question around AI. Now, I love talking to people about AI, and I've had a few guest AI experts. Um, what's your take on this in terms of utilizing AI in the sales development process? And I know that sometimes you're quoted as saying, or I read something about AI is making us worse salespeople, and why is that?
Yes, I did say that, and I still stand by it. The reason I state that is, I guess it's like anything. If you do something lazily, then it's going to be done poorly. And if I think about AI, I'm a massive user of AI. I think it's great. I used ChatGPT that December it first came out, November, December it first came out. So I'm 2 years, on the books with that. I've got some incredible tools that help me in the way that we run meetings and the way that we translate information. Awesome. The way that and that's running a business, I would say more so than actually selling. I think the benefits of AI give us the ability to quickly and to utilize our time in 30 seconds. We can find so much on businesses or replication of ideal clients. If I copy and paste in my replication of ideal client table into ChatGPT, it will take 30 seconds to find me 10 other people that I can engage with, find them on LinkedIn, call them. That's a 20-minute job.
Yeah.
Whereas before that was Google followed by, something else, followed by something else. And that was a day job. And it was like, I
Yeah.
found 10 people. I'm now going to ring them. And even then I was ringing an office number because there was no mobile numbers.
Mm,
So that's given us so much more. But what happens is everyone wants to automate everything. And I love a bit of automation, makes everything a lot easier. But we lack the personality and we lack the personalization that goes into that. Because if I think of, my ideal customers are vendors and their resellers
mm,
and partners, they are selling, they have the ability to sell. I mean, licenses can cost anything from $1,000 to a couple of $1 million. So, but if I think of when I was like, from my sales perspective, I was doing $1 million, $500,000 deals. So I could afford to spend more time
yeah.
researching, finding out, doing the thing, not procrastinating, but
Mm,
doing the process to get there. Whereas now everyone's like, right, I've got a database of 1,000. What email? Could you write me an email that I can send to the 1,000 people that we can do a sequence so that when they open it, we send them another email and then we send them another email. And yeah, okay, sure, we can absolutely do that. But then who's going to ring them? And they're like, no, 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 we don't need to ring anyone. We're just gonna email. I was like, cool, okay. So what happens when someone replies and says this looks great, can I have a demo? Like who then manages that process and what happens here? So that for me is the bit that's making us lazy. We are
mm,
chucking everything into ChatGPT and being like, that looks great. And it's not our words, it's not our language, it's not language that connects or messages that connects with our ideal clients. It's lazy.
mm,
And if we took away the veil of AI, we would get back to searching and finding and being really targeted and specific, because I don't believe that we should ever automate our outreach. I don't think it should be, from a BDM perspective, I
mm.
don't think my outreach should be automated. My marketing efforts should be automated. And because I've probably got one person and they're reaching out to 1,000, 10,000
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Yes, automate that and give me the people that click. But then I'm going to have to pick up the phone and do something. And the more automation that exists, we forget about it. And then someone's like, why did I get an email on this? And they're like, oh shit, I forgot to turn that off. So, then they're going back in and trying to change something. So that for me is where the AI and the laziness of salespeople comes in, because I see it I run training and then someone's like, oh, I put this into ChatGPT and this is what I got. And I'm like, use the thing we just created together. We don't need ChatGPT. It's worse than what we just wrote. So it's not better. If it was better, I'd be like, cool, let's use it. But I remember when a little AI ChatGPT story, I remember when it came out and I was like, oh, this is it. I'm screwed. Like I run trainings. This was before lead development as a service, but I was like, we're doing training, we're doing enablement. I was like, people can use ChatGPT and they can write an outbound email. So I tested it and I put it in. And I was like, write me an outbound email. I gave it quite a bit of information. It came back and I was like, that's crap. I'm fine. And we kept going. And that was it. I was like, I freaked out for a second. Then I was like, oh, this is awful. I'm actually going to be fine. And left it at that. So that's how I look at AI. And I think the more you use it, I mean, my ChatGPT is amazing and it's trained and I've got custom ones
Yeah.
and I use AI in other forms. Awesome. But not for my outreach. I don't use it for outreach. I use what I know, I use what works, and I approach it from that way.
Yeah.
And I'm terrified to see businesses use bots for phone calls and people are sharing it and I'm not okay with it. So that's the one bit for me that's kind of the new bit of my comments on AI is making us lazy. Please don't use that. Like that's just going to burn your brand. And if someone hears it's a robot, it's worse than a cold call.
Yeah.
10 times worse than a cold
Yeah.
call.
Yeah. It's yeah, I think the comment around laziness is true because, and again, it's a generalization. People are looking for an easier way. They want the straight line to the glory. They want all the accolades, but they're not prepared to necessarily do the work.
Mm,
I mean, if you go back to, the early times, sales was all about connections. It was all about building trust, and people, even back in the ancient times, wanted to do business with those who they knew they liked, who they trusted. And
mm,
nothing has changed in 2025. It's just there's so much more information available to us, but the fundamentals still work. People still want to do business with somebody who they can resonate with, who actually cares about them, but knows something and brings some insights to the table. So let all of your competitors do all the bot work and do all the AI stuff and all the templated stuff because it's now more and more obvious who's using AI to send out emails because they don't use the same language, right? So
no,
be you
no,
because you are the
exactly.
differentiation, you are the value proposition.
Yeah. And I think now you're seeing Gong IO, that produce all the stats. They shared, it was probably about 12 months ago now, that the cold calling success is on the rise. And it was about 12% back then. And I reckon it's higher again
Yeah.
because it's almost like the shock when you ring somebody, especially for lead development, when we're calling people that they've met and they're like, oh, finally
My phone's ringing.
oh, you picked everyone, like, oh wow, like look at that. And then they answer. And I think the changes are coming for the generations that if you think of the generations we're selling to, the senior people, they are of the generation that pick up the phone. And in probably another 10 years, the senior people will be the people that don't pick up the phone.
Yeah.
So that will be interesting, but I still believe picking up the phone will now become the new normal for them
Mm,
because they're running a bit like you're running a business and the only way to get answers quickly is pick up the phone.
correct.
And if I need something, I'm going to ring you. If I've got time to wait, I'm going to email you.
Mm.
And I think that will stand strong for the test of time for any generation.
Oh, it will. And it's as you're saying that, I'm just reminded I did a workshop last week for a company and I was talking to them about strategic communication skills in a sales environment, a leadership environment. And I said to them, hey, your first priority needs to be communication face to face, right? Particularly if you're in an organization where you can go to somebody. So, Harriet, if you're in the next pod, I should be able to go and have a conversation. If you're in the same building, I should be able to have a conversation. The second one is if you can't get there, then actually use a video call. So you want to be able to see somebody face to face because you've got all the context, sensory acuity, all that sort of stuff. And then the third option is your telephone call, right? So the very worst last option, and it's the very worst case scenario, is text or email. But that should not ever become your default standard communication method because it won't have the same impact.
Mm.
And it's fascinating looking at them. They're saying, "Really? We just send emails and up it goes, and that's it. I'm done. I've communicated. What you do with it now is up to you. No, no, you need to take responsibility for the communication because you're the one that wanted that person. It's on you now to go and follow it up. Don't expect them to come back to you." It's
Mhm.
fascinating how people see things.
Mhm.
Now, before we wrap this up, I wanted to you've written a book. Now, I know you put a video out on LinkedIn to say, "Hey, I've written a book. Everyone's writing books, but I've written a slightly different book." You've actually written a daily sales planner. So, is
I've even got one here to show you. I'm
you
like,
haven't got one?
where are they? Like,
Oh, because
they'll
they've
be over
been
there
sold out.
somewhere. They're sold out. Yeah, that's
They're
it.
sold out.
They're in the office being packed.
Love it. So let me just ask you what's the key what was the key thing behind that? And what how have you found it so far in terms of your clients and what's been some of the results using the sales planner?
So I've used the premise of a sales planner for as long as I can remember. And that kept me on track because when you're selling, and it depends on the systems, I mean, the systems we have today are great. But I remember we used a program which was like ancient and it was awesome because there was no like requirement to put notes. There was none of this fancy stuff that we have that we have now in HubSpot and Salesforce and Pipedrive. And so I loved it because I'm very organized. I could put my notes in and I could do the way I want to do it. And then I would have my notebook and that had 3 things to achieve tomorrow. And then my focus for who I wanted to go after. And sometimes they'd be calendars, but they would mainly be written because
Mhm.
I love a piece of paper. And I would write that at the end of each day. So close my laptop, write my thing, and then I come in tomorrow, do the first 3 things,
Yeah.
get on with the rest of my day. And then that evolved over time of creating a PDF, and I created a PDF version which was just boxes on a page and they had different headings, and I gave that away for free forever.
Mhm.
And I gave it to clients, I gave it to people that were struggling with how to organize their day. It was downloaded on our website. It was there, and I was struggling to find something to send as a gift. And I was like, I should turn these into planners. Like they're so useful. I would, if even if nothing else, I would just benefit from having it. And so I thought, I'm gonna design them. So we got them designed. We added in quotes, and then got them ring bound, so they were all fancy ring bound and ready to go. And you can just rip off a page, do it, and then move on to the next one. And so we sent them out to all of our clients, and the feedback has been really fun because I get photos of them and I get people saying like, this is amazing. And people that were skeptical, they were like, oh, I'm not going to use a pen and paper.
Yeah.
And I remember giving it to 2 of the guys. I ran a 2-day in sales intensive, and the owner and then the head of sales, and I gave them to them and they were like, what do we do with this? And I'm like, you've got to like open it and write in it. And this is it. So basically when you get a planner, you get the front of it's got a QR code, you access the QR code, and then it unlocks a video, which is me explaining how I use it every single day. So you've got like something to actually work against.
Yeah.
And then there's additional resources for replicating your ideal clients, reigniting templates, guides. It's a whole host of resources in there just to help maintain momentum. And then I think for some of the wins, or I guess for the people that have shared, has been just really allowing them to focus, because I know when I get the results from people, and I do a lot of accountability, like we never just do what I call a dump and run. We never do that for training. We do training and then we do accountability and follow-up calls.
Yeah.
And that's how we maintain, the results and the consistency. And I think the plan has given people that regardless of what their capability is in within the CRM, because CRMs are designed, they're out of the box. They are
Mm.
designed for one way of using them, and that's it. And so if you want to think of 3 people to reach out to, 3 deals to focus on, things to follow up with, proposals to create, and it's just in one little A5 page,
Yeah.
you can get through that really easily. And it means that for those people that are not a cold call outbounder, that's not their day-to-day job. They have to manage clients and they've got to handle inbound inquiries. This means they never go a day without prospecting. So
Yeah.
a lot of the feedback's been around the daily wins and around the fact that they're able to maintain consistency, and also how their pipeline has grown. So it was a fun experience. One of the learnings from it is that always double check your quotes, because there was a quote that I had as me, which I was like, it's dead set mine. And my husband, it was at home, my husband goes, you didn't say that. And I said, yeah, I did. And the quote is, you either win or you learn. And I've never heard it of anybody else. So I've said this, I'm like, it's mine, I say it. We Google it and
Oh,
it's
Maxwell.
Roosevelt and who, there's somebody else, like it's like 3 people attached to it, but all really significant people in the world. And I was like, okay, so the next one, we're just going to change that quote to the right person again. And so it was just so funny because I've printed all these and I'm ready. I'm excited. Everyone's getting them. Not one person said anything. And then my husband's like, did you say that? I'm like, I did say it. So yeah, so that would just be my little tip. But yeah, it's been fun, and it's interesting because it's not our core business. I mean, products aren't my core business, but it's been exciting and it's been interesting to see where we're sending them. So
Yeah,
we've sent them across the world. They've been to the US, the UK, and around Australia.
nice.
And maybe at some point I'll put a bit more effort into getting them out there. But for now, I'm happy just seeing where they go, and they get a personalized note from me. And so yeah, I really enjoy it.
Love it, love it. So the question therefore is for people who are wanting to know more about you, connect with you, and potentially get a handle on one of these sales planners. Where is the best place for them to do that?
Definitely LinkedIn, I would say. So if they just search Harriet Mellor on LinkedIn, they'll find that. Otherwise, yoursalesco.com.
Okay, awesome. I'll put those on the show notes, and
Thank you.
yeah, I'll encourage people to plug in not only this podcast but plug into yours, which is called the So Like You podcast.
Correct.
I'll put that in the show notes as well. So hey, final question. If people listen to this are struggling a little bit, not trying to do too many things at once, if there was one piece of advice you would give somebody to sort of refocus their energies, particularly from a selling perspective, what would that be?
I would say go back and look at people you've previously engaged with or inquired with that went cold or lost, and go start there,
Mm,
because they're going to be quicker, they're going to be warmer, and it's going to be a nicer process for you to get back in the swing of things and get started. And I would add a small caveat to that is don't set the goal too big. Go and call if you haven't done it for a while, and each time, and I've seen this so often where they block chunks of time, or I'm going to make 100 calls and they haven't done that for a year. Make 10.
or 10, or two,
Yeah,
or
or
one.
one or two, or and it's that whole build upon, like, do the next thing,
Yeah,
but go and do. And I love the enthusiasm when someone goes, we're going to do this, but it's 100 times more than what they were doing
yeah,
before. Just do the one, do
yeah.
two, do three, do 10, and the rest will follow. But stick to it, commit to it, stick to it, move on, do the next thing. And if you start there, that's going to have a bigger impact. Otherwise, if you set yourself up to fail, it
Yeah.
will take you another week or two to get back around. And you've got to start somewhere.
Great advice. And another good plug there for your daily sales planner, because you can use that as the momentum builder and the consistency
Absolutely.
person.
Absolutely. I'll
Excellent.
put that on the website.
Absolutely. You can use me as the quota. I'll be quoted on that.
I'll do it. I'm doing it.
Harriet, absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. Good luck. Keep up the great work you're doing, and thanks for being a guest on the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.